This video will be a character overview and analysis of second prince Camilla Huiguro. Initially, I'll provide an outline of the prince by going into her character and personality, together with a brief summary of where she is currently in the story. I'll then do an overview of her rather unique personal guard, followed by an analysis of her Nen abilities. I'll follow this up with an examination of her guardian spirit beast, GSB for short, and finally I'll finish up by giving my opinion on how good of a ruler Camilla would make were she to win the battle for succession. Let's get into it. Prince Camilla is the second offspring of King Nasubi and the first of second Queen Dolezal's 4 children. As the second eldest child of the king and the first child of the second queen, Camilla is second only to her beloved Onichan, first Prince Benjamin in terms of princely privilege and status. However, it's precisely this runner-up status that seems to have largely shaped, or maybe more accurately, misshaped her personality. You see, Camilla is as stable as a violently shaken up soda packed with Mentos. She's an egomaniac who has no patience for anyone who isn't ready to bark in affirmation the moment she graces them with her divine command. For example, about 4 hours into the voyage, she and her mother, Queen Dolezal, are having dinner, with Camilla instructing her on what clothes to purchase and reprimanding her for not adequately following her instructions last time. Camilla is big into fashion, you see, and goes to great lengths to take care of her appearance, looking significantly younger than a lot of her siblings and step-siblings, despite being older than all of them, barring Benji. Camilla, without skipping a beat, pivots from discussing fashion to the topic of murdering her siblings and step-siblings, ordering the queen to assist her in assassinating 9th Prince Halkenberg, Dolezal's own son and Camilla's brother. This despite the fact that the queen wants to remain neutral in the whole affair. Camilla embodies the archetypal spoiled child to such an extent that at 30-something years old, let's say, she genuinely laments the fact that wanting something doesn't make it come true. When bickering with Benjamin, she further exclaims that since she wants to be king, all other princes should simply volunteer to off themselves so as to make her wish a reality. The infant wobble included, I assume. This goes beyond a childish need to have her way. She seems to actually suffer real mental anguish when reality doesn't match her vision of it quickly enough, making her act impulsively and thoughtlessly. So much so that on the second day of the voyage, she seemingly goes haywire and attacks Benjamin's men, killing a few, including Moose, one of Benjamin's personal soldiers that was tasked with surveying her. She does so by using her ability, Cat's Name, which I'll talk about a bit later. She apparently went in with the most basic of plans, hoping that Benjamin's temper and pride would make him attack her and trigger her ability. Her personnel even tried to stop her, but Queen Dolezal halted them. Now, she could have done so due to 2 reasons. One, she knows her daughter well enough to realize there's no stopping her once she gets to a certain point of lunacy. Or 2, her outburst was actually entirely orchestrated and a part of Camilla's plan. While not impossible, the reason I doubt this is A, her most devoted guards didn't know, B, she risked revealing her ability and pretty much did, C, she went in blind with minimal to no info, for example she wasn't even aware Benjamin's personal guards were Nen users, D, after realizing they were Nen users, she pressed on nonetheless, E, she had no idea what Benjamin's GSB could do, and F, she got nothing out of it as far as we know. Even worse, and unbeknownst to her, thanks to Moose's sacrifice, Benjamin now has a way to keep tabs on her at all times. If what we saw was the extent of her ability, her plan basically had no chance of success. But I'll elaborate on that when we get to the Hatu section. This was simply meant to emphasize her aforementioned impulsivity and thoughtlessness. However, to fully understand why I believe this outburst from Camilla that specifically targeted Big Bro Benji happened, I need to briefly take us back to and expand on the aforementioned interaction between Camilla and him, wherein Camilla voices her vexation at the fact that the other princes have not yet properly considered collective self-deletion, so as to make her the ruler. Benjamin poetically responds by letting her know that giving her the throne would be like hiring a rabid dog as a babysitter. Cammy goes on to call him stupid, because Cammy's no babysitter. Listen, this very well could have been her half-baked attempt at a comeback, but I fully choose to believe that she doesn't have the capacity to comprehend analogies or metaphors. Cammy is Cammy after all. How could she be anything else? Something I should really mention at this point is that Camilla has the charming tendency to refer to herself in the third person. When speaking to her father or in his proximity, she seems to almost mentally regress and use the diminutive Cami, which probably doesn't really befit the second prince of Kakin, vying for kingship. Back on topic. Following their argument, as Cami is about to leave, she effectively orders Benjamin to stand aside, so she can pass. Benji refuses, and they have a stare-off before Pappy holds a potential altercation from ensuing by instructing Camilla to show respect to her older brother. Since the king is the only one whom Cami will obey, she begrudgingly does so, and goes around her mountain of an Onisan. In summation, the apparent lack of a halfway decent plan of action, her disheveled appearance despite her focus on aesthetics, and reaction upon realizing she had no chance of success, all, together with the other points already mentioned, make it so that I fully believe this was an impulsive outburst of a deeply mentally unstable and flawed individual, who, after being forced to show respect and recognize the superiority of the person she most likely hates most in the world, i.e. the only one of her siblings to outrank her in princely privilege and status, acted without thought and foresight, and was lucky to get out of the whole ordeal as cleanly as she did. Ever since going on trial and being released from Benjamin's captivity following this incident, Camilla has been largely absent from the story. We know she's almost certainly still targeting 1st Prince Benjamin and 9th Prince Halkenberg, but have not been made privy to any of the details. Sarahel, one of Camilla's personal guards, decides to approach and curse 14th Prince Wobble, so as to determine how her curse will interact with the prince's GSB. Next, let's go over Camilla's very unique personal guard, the Have-Nots. As mentioned in the previous video going over 1st Prince Benjamin, the people of Kakin are socially stratified via an immutable caste system. Now, we're not familiar with all of its features and can't definitively be sure how prominent or stratified it actually is, especially since the country went from social imperialism to a parliamentary democracy 30 years prior to the happenings of the current story. This most likely around the time King Nasubi took power following his own battle for succession. While not necessarily the case, since it's possible this was done solely to make their previous treaties and deals null and void, allowing them to, among other things, launch an expedition to the Dark Continent, a switch to a parliamentary democracy could imply a loosening of the caste system. What we do know is that there are at least 3.5 different castes. The first would of course be the royals, i.e. the king, queens, and princes. Then you'd have the regular people, which make up by far the largest caste. While I have nothing concrete to base this on, I'd say that the regular citizenry would easily account for over 95% of Kakin's populace. This caste would be further informally stratified based on economic and social status, such as is the case with pretty much all other countries. Then you have the formally recognized Have-Nots, the discriminated and ostracized minority who are presumably, among other things, barred from holding office or serving in the military. The 0.5 layer I'd like to quickly mention are the illegitimate sons and daughters of Kakin's kings, who I will talk a bit more about when I cover 3rd Prince Zhenglei. Back on topic of the Have-Nots, 2nd Prince Camilla, God bless her altruistic heart, actually took a selection of them under her protection, creating a compound on her estate for them to live on as normal military personnel, who just so happen to be dedicated to her body and soul, of course. That's borderline literally true actually, as see these Have-Nots Camilla has sponsored, at least those that were brought onto the Black Whale, each have a singular purpose: to curse to death their designated prince. Curses are a very loose, somewhat overly broadly defined category of Nen abilities. Essentially, any ability that has a detrimental, potentially long-term effect on a particular individual can be viewed as a Nen curse. This includes, but isn't limited to, Kurapika's Judgment Chain, Knuckles Hakuware, Genthru's Countdown, and so on. Apart from this, all of these abilities have in common the fact that they can be exorcised by a Nen exorcist, such as Abe or Hina. All of Camilla's Have-Nots seem to specifically utilize haunting-type curses, which are curses that trigger upon the user's death. This makes them significantly more potent than other curses, as they are, of course, empowered by post-mortem Nen. Self-alt F4ing isn't the end-all be-all of curses, however, because to get the most out of their sacrifice and ensure their target is killed quickly, the cursor needs to have poured their hatred and desire to do ill to the target for months or even years, and then commit Sudoku as close to the target as possible, with even a few meters distance potentially prolonging the target's lifespan from weeks 2 months. Something I wasn't sure where to mention, so I'm putting it here. All of Camilla's most devoted have-nots responsible for cursing the princes are women who cannot be called conventionally attractive. Considering Camilla's egoism, vanity, and focus on aesthetics, I'd argue this further showcases her fragile ego and insecurity, with her needing to surround herself with plainly uniformed, conventionally unattractive women who would by contrast emphasize her own beauty and elegance. Back on the main topic, Camilla could have created a circle of loyal Nen users who are similar to Benjamin's men, trained in various areas of expertise and Nen abilities to make them as capable and adaptable as possible. Instead, Camilla opted to make a cult-like unit of seething doomer women, almost all of which are specialized to kill a single target in one of the most roundabout ways possible. Now, to be fair, while indeed a super roundabout way of killing someone, it's not without its benefits. 1. It is slightly more discreet than blasting someone via emission or burning them to a crisp via transmutation, since upon the soldier's self-deletion, the effects of the curse would manifest hours or even days later. As such, it'd be much more difficult to connect the public suicide of one of Camilla's guards to the death of a prince a week or two following the incident in a court of law, even one which would accept Nen as evidence, though not impossible. 2. It was established very early on that there are as few as 10 people in the world that can exorcise a curse created by a post-mortem Nen. As such, if we give her the benefit of the doubt of having enough forethought to plan this all out, which is an arguable concession, it's possible that Camilla's long-term goal and plan prior to the voyage was to execute a synchronized cursing of all of her siblings, Godfather style. This would mean that all of them would seemingly fall ill all around the same time, with Benjamin as the only other Nen awakened prince prior to the voyage, the only one to immediately realize what was happening. The issue with this is that the Nen users in the employ of the various non-Nen awakened princes could tell them what was happening, and if anyone has the resources to track down and pay one of those 10 Nen exorcists in a timely manner, it would be the higher ranked princess of Kakin. Keep in mind that while she couldn't have predicted the exact circumstances of the succession battle as it is occurring now, Camilla's been preparing to take the throne for years, and while this would see many of the princes killed, it almost certainly wouldn't eliminate the higher ranked ones, realistically competing with Camilla for the throne, such as Benjamin, Zheng Lei, or Terror Sandwich. And when Benjamin inevitably does get it exorcised, you can bet your butt he'll bring down the unbridled hammer of fraternal fury via his well-trained army of Nen users with actual combat-capable abilities right down on the head of his dear little sister. Actually, when you think about it, the fact that the princes are on a ship with very limited resources and potentially no access to any of those 10 exorcists is quite the stroke of luck for Camilla. I can't wait to see how she screws it up. To piggyback off of that, I have to ask, why is Camilla even bothering with cursing Princess 10 to 14? They're literally children, with 5th Prince to Beppa even saying herself they have basically no political or other connections to meaningfully engage in the succession war. Why not allocate more of the have-nots to cursing Benjamin, for example? Make it so that if a Nen exorcist ever gets near him, they'll have the same reaction that one Hunter Association exorcist did when she saw Gone. Unlike with manipulation, which works on a first-come, first-served basis, it was never established that multiple people cannot curse the same target. I swear, Camilla's the Castro of princes. Excellent potential squandered on extremely suboptimal resource allocation and management. Moving on. As already well established by this point, Camilla is one of the 2 princes that was already awakened to Nen prior to the voyage. Camilla's Hatsutu, which I was supposed to get to a page and a half ago, is Cat's name. The cat who lived a million times. Now, I know I've effectively called her unhinged on multiple occasions up until now, but seriously, this is the ability of a clinically insane person. Let me explain. Cat's name is a counteractive ability type, which means it triggers in response to the user getting hit or suffering damage. In Camilla's case, the trigger for Cat's name is her being killed. The cat then does a zero-hand style attack, capturing and one-shotting Camilla's killer. The killer is liquefied and their essence is fed to Camilla, Meruem style. She then returns to life with her injuries fully healed. See, this is why prior to her exchange with Benjamin, she urged the king to clarify the rules and define dropping out of the succession war as being biological death. This, of course, because in her big-brained mind, she thought she was being shrewd, since her ability allows her to return back to life. She never thought to consider that under her own recommended rules, she might be considered as having dropped out the moment she died, and that returning back to life may not actually matter. This, of course, entirely depends on how one interprets the rule, cueing the discussion on whether Kroll won his deathmatch versus Hisoka or not. Luckily for her, Daddy Dearest tells her just that. Define the meaning your own damn self. Benju Nisan then chimes in, echoing their father's words, just in his own much more, fratricidal, or in this case, sororicidal way, after which the aforementioned triggering exchange between Cammy and Benji happens. A few notes on Cat's name. 1. I've no idea what poor soul trained Camilla in Nen, but supposing they and their family even survived that experience, I have to imagine they'd put themselves under a pledge to never take up any jobs with the Hui-Go-Ro family ever again. 2. The ability, if not specialization based, which I think is the most likely possibility, is then conjuration/emission and transmutation based. Emission, or more likely conjuration, to account for the cat itself, and transmutation to account for the liquefaction of the killer's body and aura into a life-giving substance capable of resurrection. This would then make Camilla either a transmuter or conjurer, with the former being more likely just based on her personality. 3. Okay, let's say you're psychotic enough to think of and then attempt to manifest this kind of ability. How do you go about doing that? How do you test it? You get someone to kill you? Right off the bat? You think you've added the appropriate conditions, pledges, and mastered Nen enough to manifest this sort of ability and just go, I'd blow my brains out. I'm ready. I don't think that's too realistic. Though I suppose that very risk, paired with the anxiety and trepidation of knowing you're about to die, and being prepared to go through with it, would greatly improve your chances of actually manifesting such a literally death-defying Hatsu. The difficulties inherent in developing such an ability are why I believe that it's most likely specialization-based, as this strikes me more as an ability one is more likely to awaken rather than develop, for reasons already mentioned. And as far as we know, specialists are the only ones that can come pre-wired with a particular Hatsu. But alright, let's say you've either awakened or successfully developed this ability. Amazing! You're effectively, but not literally, unkillable, and your ability all but guarantees that your attacker will be killed as well. This is still potentially one of the stupidest Hatsu in the whole of Hunter x Hunter. Why? Because it looks like it requires Camilla to go into a state of total Zetsu in order to trigger it. Instead of going for the obvious bait and attacking a Nen user willingly entering Zetsu with a lethal attack, every half-decent Nen user versed in Nen combat would simply attack with the attempt to incapacitate or simply attack indirectly. Just knock her out, restrain her, preferably with your own ability if possible, or even better, attack her indirectly by blasting some rubble to fall down on her or something. She's in Zetsu, so it's obvious that taking heavy damage is the threshold needed for her ability to activate. By doing any of these, you're very likely to bypass her activation condition. Furthermore, it's one of those abilities that becomes utterly and completely useless when revealed. The only saving grace of this ability would be if either A, death wasn't the only activation condition, as in if she could trigger it after taking some moderate damage to potentially cause an equivalent amount of moderate damage to the opponent, and maybe even heal herself. This would actually make her into an extremely dangerous opponent that you could only defeat by restraining, exhausting, or otherwise incapacitating. Sayu's three monkeys capable of taking away an opponent's senses, or Mise's cross game capable of restraining someone would be excellent counters to Cat's name, for example. Or 2, if a key condition of the ability doesn't require of her to effectively announce she possesses a counteractive Hatsu by engaging her opponent while already in a state of Zetsu. As in, if she could have her aura nodes open and then suddenly close them as her opponent was launching a potentially lethal attack. While this would make her ability much less obvious, it would also make it much more manageable and consequently less risky and thus less potent. As such, this could mean that she wouldn't reach the threshold of risk needed to activate an ability that allows Camilla to one-shot her opponent and then resurrect herself fully healed. A combination of these two could also work. As in, this would mean that she would have the choice to engage an opponent with her aura nodes active, and then, just before suffering damage from an attack, suddenly enter Zetsu. She'd have to manage and evaluate the huge risk of taking a Nen attack while completely defenseless, but were she to not be killed instantly, she'd be capable of reflecting the damage back at the opponent and then healing fully using their life force. However, this variation of her Hatsu wouldn't allow her to activate the one-shot resurrection and heal version we've already seen her use on Moose, since in order to do that, she'd need to have already entered combat in a state of Zetsu so as to advertise her counteractive ability and thus incur additional risk. This could justify why she approached and goaded Moose into attacking her while already in a state of Zetsu, instead of goading him into shooting her and entering Zetsu just before he pulled the trigger. By the way, Moose wasn't an idiot, he realized immediately she was a counteractive type, he just chose to shoot her so as to reveal her ability, and he pretty much did. Which again, I have to emphasize, if this is the extent of her ability and she really cannot use Cat's name in any other capacity, to reveal it makes her the top nominee for Hunter x Hunter's equivalent of the Darwin Awards. It actually makes Cat's name into a curse as opposed to a useful ability, because if the trigger is solely for her to be killed, there's a whole spectrum of things you can do to a person that's between the binary state of being alive or dead. If Benjamin or Terror Sandwich ever found this out, let's just say that that'd be a very difficult birthday gift to top. Now let's talk about her guardian spirit beast. While we haven't been told anything too specific regarding how it works and have yet to see it in action, we do know that Camilla's GSB is a coercive manipulator. Coercive manipulation essentially means that once certain conditions are met, e.g. the target receives a kiss or gets pierced by a specific needle, the manipulator takes complete control of them. Considering Camilla's deep-seated urge for people to unquestioningly obey her, this kind of ability makes a whole lot of sense. The alternative would have been a Nanika-esque wish-granting specialist Tatsu, considering her previously mentioned petulant whining at the miserable state of affairs, of reality not simply bending to Her Majesty's will. But, you know, this is a close second. As said, we don't really know what the conditions for the GSB taking control are, but my guess is that a potential trigger is someone either explicitly rejecting a direct order from Camilla, or failing to comply with an order in a timely manner. As such, it's possible that when Camilla asks her mother, Queen Dolazol, if she had followed through with Camilla's order in relation to Ninth Prince Halkenberg, and the Queen attempts to outright refuse or make an excuse to prolong its fulfillment, she may be coerced into fully obeying Camilla's command via the GSB's ability. If this is true, the reason it has not appeared thus far is because Moose was actually given a choice, not an order. Plus, she was in a state of Zetsu and unable to supply her GSB. We also know that GSBs will not actively target other GSBs, or their hosts, so that's why it wouldn't have triggered when she ordered Benjamin to move. As far as the GSB's design is concerned, it looks like an elegant, if not slightly suggestive, Medusa-like creature, reminiscent of the fashionable and elegant dresses Camilla is so fond of. However, lurking inside this veneer of beauty lurks a dark and sinister entity, mirroring Camilla herself. The ability to coerce may pour out in a gaseous or liquid form from the various supposed orifices. It could also potentially take control of someone by appearing as a dress on them. This would mean it could only control one individual at a time, but perhaps it would open up other options as well, such as enhancing or augmenting the controlled individual in some way, shape, or form. Just imagine Benjamin's shattered pride were it to be used on him, and he somehow made it out alive. You know what? I think he could pull it off. Now, let's briefly go into how likely Camilla is to win the succession war, entirely from an in-world perspective. Considering her immense princely privilege, the fact that she was awakened to Nen prior to the voyage, the massive benefit of having a Nen-awakened personal guard, and most importantly, the foremost advantage of having had the time to actually prepare all of this, all make it seem as though she should either be on par with, or a runner-up to Big Bro Benji, who has a comparable amount of resources at his disposal. However, as mentioned before, her resource allocation, management, and focus, as well as her unstable temper, all mean that in practice her chances are reasonably lower than that. Unlike the first prince, who has Captain Might to keep his temper in check and offer sound advice, Camilla listens to no one but the voices in her head. Even if everyone else is defeated, I can't see her defeating Benjamin. And if Benjamin is defeated, I don't see her being capable enough to fend off multiple princes gunning for her. As soon as it's revealed, her personal guard are then-awakened hunting curse users, explicitly targeting the other princess. And I don't think she's cunning or discreet enough to keep that under wraps for long. Especially considering Sarah Hell's plan to curse 14 Prince Wobble while using Kurapika's Nen classes, which will have representatives from various princes present, as an excuse to get close. Finally, how good of a ruler would Camilla make should she... No. I am not even going to dignify this with a serious response. She'd probably nuke a neighboring country because its president sent her a dress that was one size too large as a birthday gift or something. Seriously, if not literally the worst, then... No, she'd definitely be the worst. Give me someone who'd be worse. I dare you. And that's Second Prince Camilla covered. I honestly went into this one thinking it would either be briefer or about the same duration as Benjamin's video. But while I tried to keep that one focused and coherent, I just kept rambling on in this one. I really hope you were able to follow it all. It's definitely not one of my better scripted videos. In any case, as said before, I'm planning to cover Third Prince Zhang next. Then I'll most likely take a break from Hunter x Hunter and do a video on something else. Following that, if you guys like and are receptive to these prince videos, I wouldn't mind continuing the series and potentially covering all the princes. As always, thank you very much for watching. Feedback is always appreciated. If you'd like to go the extra mile in supporting the channel, do consider becoming a channel member, and I'll see you in the next one.